to the races. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to day 3 of Death Journaling in Real Life. I have a fabulous guest today that I'm going to introduce you to, who I love dearly and have been connected with for a handful of years now. So I have Monica Torres, and Monica is a mortician and an embalmer and does really specialized work in the field and is very renowned for this specialized work. So welcome, Monica.
Thank you, Francesca. I am so honored to be here live with you on Facebook. I have to admit, this is the first live that I've ever done. So I love that I'm doing it with you, and I'm so excited to talk about everything, Francesca, and everything about your book and everything that you're doing.
I love it. Thank you. So I'm going to continue to admit people. We've got more people coming in. Welcome, welcome. And Monica, we met, I cannot remember the year. It was before COVID, and it was in Arizona, and it was the Before I Die event that we were both invited to be speakers at, right?
Yes, I believe that was it was 2018, I believe, is when we met, maybe 2019. It was a while ago. Yeah. Great event put on by Miss Pamela Speck. Truly extraordinary women and people that joined us there at the Before I Die Arizona. That event, Francesca, I have to say, was really transformative for me, not just professionally, but personally. Your seminar, the talk that you gave in the big room where we all went in, it kind of, I have to say, it really was the most memorable experience that I had at Before I Die Arizona. And it changed the way that I see and view the dying process, but also what my wishes are. I never thought about that before. I'm so focused on after death that I never thought about, gosh, what do I really want that experience to be like? If I have the opportunity to decide, right? Because we don't all get that opportunity, but many of us do. And you changed my outlook. You opened up a whole can of worms that I just was not even prepared for. So your new book, which I love, by the way, I love how you break it down so simply. You talk about that, right? You talk about what to think about, how to get things organized.
Yeah, and I really hope, thank you for that. That's so lovely to hear about our initial connection. And it definitely, just taking a step back from the book to return to that time, the connections that I was able to make with you and with other people there in the field and the people who gathered together to be a part of that event, it was really magical. It was really beautiful. And then to think that now my memory is being jogged enough that I believe it was late fall of 2018. And I think that it was like the last event that I traveled to for quite some time. I believe that that's true. It was, and then like the world shut down, right? And we were so disconnected, but we managed to stay connected virtually and over email and social media and supporting each other. And I love watching what you're doing always. And you have such amazing reels and videos and graphics that you put out. I know, they're so fun. And it's so engaging, your presence, and people feel like they know you. And I feel very fortunate that I actually do know you. And then recently I was able to come back out to Arizona for a grief training, and we were able to connect and get together then and have dinner together. And it was just awesome. And I feel like when I'm in your presence, whether it's virtually or whether we're lucky enough to actually be together in person, it's just lovely. I feel energized by you. I feel inspired by you. And I love that collaborative spirit that you definitely hold in this field.
Well, thank you so much. And the feeling is mutual. And I want to say, I think you and I have a really special connection because we both love serving families. But I want to say to the funeral directors, perhaps, and maybe families and end-of-life doulas who are watching, this is the kind of connection that you really want to foster with your funeral directors and your end of life doulas and with your families, because that's when you see real magic happen. If you have the tools and you have the people in place to help you get through this difficult time, it doesn't have to be a scary experience. Whether, you know, you're a person who is facing death through an illness, or if you have a loved one who is facing death, or a child or a friend, having the tools and the people in place is really the key. Preparedness, right? And that's what your book is really about. It's like strategic preparedness. And I love the way that you go into those like 4 or 5 steps in the very beginning of like, this is what this book is about. Bam, bam, bam. And it breaks it down, a really difficult subject to talk about and a really scary kind of thought process. It breaks it down into manageable bite-sized chunks that anybody can do. Adults, people who are of experienced age, even children. I think if parents are really creative, they can even weave their children into this process and make it something that's not scary, that is kind of lighthearted even, and takes the fear out of the entire process.
Yeah, that is definitely an earnest hope of mine, that it feels very welcoming, that it doesn't feel completely overwhelming. Because I think for a lot of us, when we just imagine beginning to make some of our plans, or we're grappling with our mortality, or we're actually imagining our end of life, or people who are, you know, dealing with a terminal illness and it's a lot more pressing for them, it can just feel so big and so mysterious, and there are so many unknowns, and it can feel really heavy. And so being able to really break it down, and the focus for, I mean, at least 90% of the book is really about life, and it's really about living, right? And it's about who you are and what you value and your quality of life. And then that sort of much smaller percentage is really thinking about those final moments, because we are truly living up until we are no longer living. So that is the aim, that is the focus, thinking about connections, thinking about memories, thinking about healing through reflection and through that processing that can be so cathartic for people. And like you said, bringing children in. I mean, the original inspiration for the book is my own death journal. And I've talked about this, that it's a gift that I'm making for my loved ones. And I continue to make this gift, and I continue to add to it whenever I feel sort of inspired or called to. And some of the activities that I've done in my death journal are actually activities that I've done with my children, with my family. And so one of them in particular is about beliefs. And it occurred to me when I was writing the book that I wanted to add this section that I didn't actually have featured in my own death journal at that time. And so I asked my 2 kids, and they're teenagers, to try this out with me. And so my 2 prompts for that are, I believe in, and I believe that. And so we each had a note card, and I told them, you know, feel free to go in any direction that you feel called. Feel free to be serious about it. Feel free to be silly. Like, you can make jokes, anything goes. And so we sat down together and we worked through this just silently. And then we each shared ours. And it was such a lovely combination of things that were sort of irreverent, like, you know, I believe in cheese at every meal or something like that. And then things that were really, truly meaningful and deeply held by us. And so those are now glued into the pages of my own death journal, and it became a prompt for other people who are reading the workbook. Oh, sorry, Monica, I did mute you because we were getting a little feedback from the group. There you go.
I did want to say, I don't want to give away too much about your book, because I want people to buy it and read it. It's a really easy read for everyone who's on right now. It's a really, really easy read. Probably something that you can even read through, like on a flight, or on the bus, or if you're just sitting on a lazy afternoon by the pool or whatever. But I love, 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 love how you incorporated the idea of community into the book, and how important it is, and how it does kind of give us that extra push to do this go through these challenging steps with your family or your friends. It doesn't have to be your family. It can just be a community of people who may be going through the same thing that you're going through, or maybe people that just want to get their shit together, right? Like, it's time. I feel like I'm trying to juggle all these different things at one time. And it's a chore to have to think about end of life issues. It is a chore, and I don't want to think about it. Like most people, most of us, we don't want to think about death. We don't want to think about having to put our last wishes together. And when we're faced with it, when the doctor comes in and says, hey, it's real, like you have weeks, months, whatever, then it becomes this huge, overwhelming burden. And I think that's the one thing about this book that I've learned, is that it doesn't have to be done in one sitting, and it doesn't have to be done alone. It doesn't have to be scary. It can be done in a way where it's we can create activities around the actual process itself. So that's something that I've really been struggling with my own family. My family is we're Latino, and in my culture, we don't talk about death. Like, we don't talk about I don't think my grandparents even talked about, they were on their deathbed and my grandpa was still talking about what he was going to do tomorrow. And he was in the dying process. So we don't talk about death openly. It's been really hard to get my family on board with like talking about these issues and stuff. But I feel like me as a mortician, like, I can't give them a hard time because I haven't got all of my death plan in order. And that includes the simple stuff. Like a lot of it is just really simple things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we had a guest on yesterday, Jennifer O'Brien, and she was talking about solo aging and how when she's envisioning her end of life at this point in her life, I mean, things can always change, right? Relationships can start at any moment. But at this point, she's wrapping her head around the fact that like there might not be loved ones at her bedside. And what does she do with that? And how does she feel about that? And how does she plan for that? And then other people who have these like huge, robust natural networks, and then anything in between. So really assessing for you in your life at this moment, who do you have? So I take people through a lot of the, I always start with who's in your community. And that could also mean you might not have a lot of loved ones, friends, family members to call on. So who else do we need to add into your care team? And those could be people for hire, those could be neighbors, those could be volunteers. And so really thinking about what are we going to need to have in place for that time? And then, where do you want to be? Where's your most ideal place that you might be? And then contingency plans. And then if we have to make a change in plans, how could we still add in these personal touches so that people can still feel like this is my space, this feels homey, this feels comforting to me. This doesn't just feel like a sterile, hospital room that anybody could be inside of.
Yeah, I agree.
Those considerations.
I think that's the one thing that I took away from when we met and I took your seminar, is that I realized very right off the bat, when you split us into individual spaces, I realized right away that like, I don't want to be in a hospital bed. I want to be in my bed, in my home, maybe somewhere that's comfortable. Maybe it's on the beach somewhere with that ocean breeze coming in. And I'm now at a place where I'm willing to accept death in that way. Before, I don't think I was there. I just didn't know that there was anything different. My grandmother went into hospice. They had her there. They kept telling us like, oh, we're trying to make her comfortable. And she kept telling me, like, I want to go home. And we're like, oh, grandma, you need to stay here. The doctors want you to stay here. But she knew, I mean, she's actually that people died at home all the time. And so, but we just didn't know any better. It was just, we didn't know there was any other option. So now I feel so empowered because I know that I don't have to die like that. I don't have to. I can make the decision to say, I don't want that. I want to be in my bed, and here it is in writing. And so everyone knows that I choose this and not this. And I feel like that's really powerful for me, because my grandmother didn't get what she wanted. It could have been different if she would have had it written down.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know what we don't know. So exploring some of these options and recognizing what we do have available to us is really important for that healthy preparedness. So thank you for sharing that. I'm wanting to put it out to the crowd here. If anybody's willing to share, what is it about an atmosphere that you would find comforting if you were to envision your final moments? I'd love to hear because it's always unique. It always varies from person to person. And
Yeah, we want to hear
Cheryl
what you all, what makes you tick? What is your what's the one thing you want in your room with you? I like to think that I would have my pets there with me.
Mm, yeah, I could picture my puppy up on the bed, even though that's not usually allowed. It would be a special circumstance. My kitty up there too. And for me, I want what I think I would want at that time is to still hear the sounds of life being lived. That's really important to me, that I know that my loved ones are also, bickering or cooking or tidying up or talking about their day or talking about an argument they had with their friend. For me personally, I don't think I would want it to be super silent or reverent, or I just want it to be like life is happening, and that will give me some comfort that life will continue to happen even in my absence. And then I would, in a sense, know that my loved ones would continue to live. That would be important for me. But for other people, it's very different, and it's always
Yeah.
so interesting to know.
Well, Monica from Maryland says she would love the smell of salt water and a seaside village. And I'm with you, Monica. I need to have the ocean air, I think. I think that would really help my transition to be more peaceful. Some wind chimes, possibly ocean air, some Egyptian cotton. These are all things that I learned during your class, and I've always held on to it since then. Like I kind of have this picture now. What about y'all? What makes you comfortable? Like to see them in the chat.
Yeah, and I got a question in from Cheryl about the UVM course, which is a course that I developed. Some of these concepts are discussed in that course, and they are thoroughly covered within the workbook. So you, as a mortal, as a person who's a lifelong learner, likely as maybe a budding or aspiring doula, will be able to work through these things yourself in your own time, and then you'll be able to offer them and extend that kind of care and those questions out to other people.
Leslie says, I would like to die outside if possible, or at home with the sounds of nature around me, not in a hospital. Dogs are on my bed, light bed covering with a small scent of lavender in the air. I think that's pretty common, don't you, Francesca? When we really start going into these areas of exploration, don't you feel like this is a common theme?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, what they find comfort in life, they continue to find comfort in death. And sometimes we don't make those little touches available to people. And we could, even if someone isn't able to physically go outdoors because that wouldn't be possible or comfortable physically for that person, we can bring in things from the outdoors. We can bring them in and surround them. So fresh lavender, perhaps, or, I have a lavender spray, or a certain candle that might put out a scent, or a certain fragrance, like your mother's perfume, potentially something like that, that you can just spritz on a cloth. And if it gets to be too much, then you take it away. You make sure that you're not inundating the space with things that are going to be stuck there. But yeah, or the smell of, for me, I mean, this just came to mind, the smell of garlic sauteing. Love that. Like brings me such comfort. For other people, it could be, chicken soup is on the stove or cookies are baking.
Yeah,
things that really,
in the background, right?
Yeah, and we can attend to all of our senses.
We got some good feedback here. We have, let's see here. It said that, I want to see who it is here that's saying this though. Fresh cut flowers would be nice. So that's kind of nice, because thinking that we only get flowers after death, right? Because I'm a funeral director. So typically the only time like I get to smell flowers is at the funeral home. But smelling flowers during life is really something special, because it does say it's a special day, right? My boyfriend's gotten really good about buying me flowers. And so now I do have flowers around the house on a regular basis. And it does make me feel like it's a special day today. Every time I see or smell those flowers. And it is a special day. Those days that we're moving on to the next life, it is absolutely a special time. So flowers, I love that. Candles, open windows. Lipka says music with a nature within view. And then I think like a lot of people, she said, I want to have my children and my dearest friends around me.
Yeah, that who. And in the book, I have, see if I can find it. I have a graphic in there for people to fill out, because some people are good with journaling and just writing down text. And then here's, oh, put it up there. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
you, and it's about your circles. And so, who would you want to be closest to you, available to you for most of the time? These are the people you feel most safe with, most comfortable with. You can be really intimate with these people, and you wouldn't feel potentially embarrassed for needing care or things like that. And then a little bit farther out, who's your next circle where people may be coming in and out at certain times. And then even further than that, acquaintances, neighbors, people who might be able to stop by and drop things off and kind of offer help to the other people who are closer in that circle with you, and care providers and volunteers. And so how would you want to plug people in? And then would there be people that you wouldn't want to be a part of this, or
yes,
have very specific wishes for? Yeah, I mean, it really is something that we don't often consider, and then it can become an issue for sure.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that 100%. Because there are people that you just don't, you don't, maybe, I don't know. I don't force relationships anymore at the point of life where I'm at, but there are people who are supporting our loved ones. So that's definitely something to consider, is that maybe there's someone that is not my favorite person, but that person is a huge support to the people who are taking care of me or loving me. And so I think that it comes down to like, okay, remembering, yes, I'm going through this dying process, but you're leaving loved ones behind and they need support too.
Absolutely. Whether it's meals or coming over to walk a pet or running some children or grandchildren around, all of those things are so important. And let's see here, Christine mentioned childbirth as well, and wanting some quiet working through childbirth. And so I love that, kind of considering when you were in this experience that was really super intense, that's both physical and spiritual and emotional and social, what did you need then? And thinking about how that could also, you could translate that into end of life. And so in some of my wishes that I've made clear to family, it's also like, I want to have some quiet along the way. And I want you to take breaks as my caregivers. I want you to be able to go take care of yourselves. And that will give me reassurance that you're okay as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. These are really great comments that we're getting here. We're getting some really great feedback.
Absolutely.
So let me do like a quick fire before we have to jump off. What are the 3 things from your book that you really want to impact people with, Francesca? What are the 3 main takeaways that you feel that you want to project?
That's such a good question. I really want for people to know that when they open this book and they read the introduction, that they don't have to be ready for anything in particular. They can be where they are, they can be who they are, and they can bring that into the work. And so from there, they can look at the different sections, and one might appeal to them more than others. And they're welcome to just dive right in wherever they feel like their starting point might be. And then they can kind of like loop back, circle back, go sideways, And for other people, it might be that they come straight through the book and read it page to page to page to page. So I really want people to know that it's very flexible. Yeah, I'm really, as a doula, that is my stance, whether I'm supporting people through beginning of life or postpartum, birth, labor, or end of life or grief. It's really about recognizing where you are, not pushing yourself too hard, too fast. We have to think about pacing. We have to think about our psychological wellness as well. So to not be forceful with it, this is very invitational.
I love that. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I feel like, I guess, I don't know why I feel like that. Like I have to read a book from front to cover. I'm one of those people, but you're right. Like the way your book is set up, you can just jump right in. It doesn't really have like, you can go back and forth on it and kind of go back to the beginning and go back to the end. But I do love in the beginning how you kind of set people up for expectation and what it's about and what to expect. So super helpful. Is there anything that you wanted to ask me before I know you had mentioned you wanted to ask me some questions about entrepreneurship.
I know I would just love in the last couple minutes that, let me just address Cheryl's question real quick that just came through about special downloads, or she's noticing them. So yes, there are some special downloads in here that New Harbinger, my publisher, is offering. So you just go to that website and you kind of put your name and email address in, and then you can get a bunch of files. I think we came up with 5 that you can download and print off. So they're in the book, but then you can use them as print offs as well. But
That's
in our
great.
yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah.
I would love to know, because you are always up to something, and I would love to know, you're very driven, you're very focused. So what is lighting you up right now in terms of projects, events, upcoming work? I know you're thinking about writing, which I love.
Yeah. So I'm catching a breather. I ended my speaking engagements for this year. Last month was a extremely busy month for my speaking engagements across the country. And so I am taking some time this July to spend with my family and spend with my boyfriend and the dogs. We're doing some paddle boarding trips. And during this time, I feel like I know there's like a new moon, right? And we're in a new season now. And I'm a person who's very connected to nature. And so I'm going to do that because I am in a time of change in my life. My business is changing. My model is changing for my business. I've moved more into education now. I'm still working with families, embalming, but I am going in a different direction. And I feel like it's the right time. You and I talked personally about me writing a book, and it's been really hard for me because of not just my experience through the pandemic. All of that is starting to come down on me now that things have kind of fizzled out. So I think that residual trauma from embalming all of those bodies, the traumatic deaths that I took care of, is starting to affect me. So I need to take care of my heart. I need to take care of my soul so that I can continue to help families. Writing about my experiences, I have found to be more difficult than I initially had planned, because it's stirring up all of those emotions. And because I do specialize in traumatic death, all of my experiences, they're really difficult to go back and remember. It's because I relive them. And so it's been a lot. It's been really hard for me. I have to I'll start writing and then I start having anxiety. I'll start experiencing sleeplessness, some agitation, a lot of those, I guess it's PTSD kind of, I guess is what it is, a lot of those symptoms. So I have to put it down. And then I think to myself, do people even want to read this? I don't know if people want to read this. It's really deep. It's really heavy. It's really these stories of traumatic deaths that I've experienced. I just can't imagine that people would want to read them. But then again, I keep having people encouraging me to share my stories and my experiences. Yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, I think I applaud you for being so self-aware, for taking care of yourself, for noticing where you're at, and for respecting where you're at, honoring it, and leaning into this is the pace that you need to go at. And so when you feel called to sit and write, you do. When you feel flooded and overwhelmed, you put it aside. It's so important. And then it reminds me of the practice of a life review. So when we're working with people at the end of life, or any adult at any time, and you think about starting a life review with somebody, often the first step could be just this unfiltered life review where you're going through everything, right? And a lot comes up and you realize there's a lot to work through. And whether that's through expressive writing, journaling, ritual, having a compassionate listener, maybe kind of doing some resolution work if that feels right, leaning on a therapist, like whatever's needed as part of that process. And then the second step would be creating a remembrance gift or a remembrance project version of the life review, which wouldn't necessarily have everything. It would have the messages that would make sense for the recipient. So I feel like with your book, it's kind of similar where your first step is to just kind of like let it all out, let it all come. And then think about what you need to do to take care of yourself. And then the second step would be to think about who's going to receive it. And that's where editing
that's a really good way to put it. And I've really what I've noticed, and I know you and I have talked about this on personally, is that my journey through caring for people who have suffered traumatic death has led me down a path of fear. And fear, there's a lot of different aspects of fear, but like experiencing, like, you know, what families experience as well. Fear is there. It's just this overwhelming like cloud. And part of my journey has been battling fear and learning how to overcome fear, but also having a relationship with it. Just like I have a relationship. I have a really close relationship with death because of the way my work. So I have also fostered this relationship with fear, and that is empowering to me. So now, like, I have named my fear so that I have someone to address, and I can tell it to go to hell, or you know what I mean? I can tell it like step aside or whatever, but it has a name. And I think that incorporating that into my book is important, so that it's not just this book of difficult experiences, but like a story of overcoming a difficult time, of overcoming fear, success through that story. Even though, you know, when we're in our darkest days and dealing with a death that's traumatic, whether it's a professional that's serving a family or a family who's going through it, fear plays a really big role, and it's overwhelming for everyone involved. So that's one of my projects right now. I'm really working towards. It's very difficult to navigate. I applaud you on everything that you have done to make your books material and getting your book in people's hands, because most people do not realize once you sit down and you decide that you're going to write a book, there is this whole other world that is so competitive and so overwhelming, and nobody wants to take you seriously. And you've done a lot, Francesca. I'm really proud of you, and I want to encourage you to keep pushing. This is an amazing project that you've been working on, and it's come to fruition. It's here. Beyond that, writing the book, I would like to keep continuing to spread my education and make it more available to people, but also to monetize off of that too, because I have to pay my bills, and I'm giving very useful information to a lot of people. My company is now global. So yesterday I was working one-on-one with an embalmer in Ireland, which is really, to me, I've always wanted to have a global company where I could help funeral directors and morticians and families around the world. And I feel like I'm doing that. Like, I'm impacting families on the other side of the world because of what I'm teaching these other funeral directors. So it's really gratifying. I want to continue to make that reach, make my classes able, for people to get them in their hands and be able to get online and be able to take these classes, create more content. That's a big part of the future of what I'm looking forward. But I do kind of have an itch to get back and meet families. And so I'm kind of dabbling back there, and do I want to go and spend some time at a local funeral home, because it is a calling for morticians, I think. And right now for me, I am feeling a little bit of a calling in the new community that I live in, that the community needs support. There's a huge opportunity for green burial here. And that's really out of my realm of expertise. So it's like, I love to learn, and I'm like, maybe this is an area where I can challenge myself and help my community in a way where they don't have support right now. So lots of plans, as always. You know me,
Love
I'm
it.
always onto something new.
Yes, you are. And I love following it and supporting it. And so I lift you up as you continue to find your path, make a lot of amazing impact in the world. So thank you so much for doing this with me, for making the time. And I know you had so many tech issues that you had to work through. It's been amazing to connect. And I want to thank everybody who's here and who's live and who has been chatting and supporting this all. I hope you'll come back tomorrow. I have another fabulous guest who I love, another sister in death care, Gabby Jimenez, and I look forward to it. So everybody take good care, and thank you again.
Thanks, Francesca. Good luck with the book. Everybody go buy her book.